There is something that found you before you found it. Not a coincidence, not an algorithm, something older than both. You did not search for this. You were navigating the ordinary current of your day, moving through the usual noise, and then something stopped you here. Something in you recognized a signal before your conscious mind could name it. That recognition, that pull toward something you cannot yet articulate, is not accidental. It is the first piece of evidence we are going to examine today. Because if you are willing to look at it closely enough, what you find underneath it will change the way you understand every moment of attention you have ever given to anything. The name in the title is Thoth, and I want to be precise with you about what that name actually points to, because the way it is usually handled is exactly backward from what it means. Most people encounter that name and immediately begin performing. They perform reverence, or they perform skepticism, or they perform excitement about being chosen. What almost no one does is stop and observe what the name is actually pointing at, what it has always been pointing at. Because Thoth, in the oldest records we have, is not a deity who grants favors. Thoth is the principle of the mind that watches itself. The scribe who records what is, the measurer, the one who stands at the threshold between the known and the unknown and does not flinch from what is found there. That is not mythology. That is a description of a cognitive function, and it is the most powerful function a human mind can perform. So before we go any further, I want you to do something, not as a ritual, as an experiment in observation. Notice what happened in your body when you saw the title of this transmission. Notice it right now. Was there a small lift of excitement, a flicker of something you would call hope, a pull toward the idea that something cosmic had selected you specifically? Notice it without judgment. Do not rush past it. The reaction you just had, whatever it was, is the exact place we are going to start, because that reaction is a map. And the territory it maps is the specific thing this entire transmission is designed to help you see clearly. Here's what I mean. The idea of being chosen is one of the most potent forces operating in human consciousness right now. It moves through spiritual communities, through self-development spaces, through the architecture of how people engage with content about frequency, vibration, ancient wisdom, quantum fields. And it moves through these spaces almost entirely unobserved. People feel it, respond to it, organize their sense of identity around it, and almost never stop to watch it directly. Almost never ask the question that Thoth as a principle would demand be asked first. What is actually happening here, and who is the one watching it? That question is not a deflation. It is not skepticism designed to take something away from you. It is the most direct path to something far more real and far more powerful than the version of being chosen that most people are unconsciously chasing. So let us look at this carefully. Let us look the way Thoth looked, with precision, without flinching, and with the understanding that what you see clearly, you transform. Not eventually, in the act of seeing. The historical record of Thoth is older than most people realize and more specific than the way the name gets used in modern spiritual content. In the Egyptian cosmological system, Thoth, called Jehuti in the original language, was the kneader of measurement language and the recording of what is. He was not the creator of the universe in the way other figures were. He was the one who measured it, who recorded it, who stood at the scales in the Hall of Two Truths and observed the weight of the heart against the feather of Ma'at, which was the principle of truth, balance and cosmic order. His role was not to intervene. His role was to witness with absolute accuracy and to record what was actually there. This is a precise description of the observer function. Not the observer who wants a particular outcome, the observer who sees what is. And here's what makes this specific to our subject today, the thing that the mythology is actually encoding. In the Egyptian system, Thoth was also credited with the invention of writing itself, not writing as decoration or record-keeping in the administrative sense, writing as the technology that makes thought visible to itself. That allows the mind to stand outside its own contents and observe them, to see what it has been thinking, to measure the distance between what it believes and what is actually true. That is the Thoth function, making the invisible visible, making the unconscious conscious, not through magic, through precise observation. And here's something the popular retelling almost always leaves out. Thoth in the oldest texts was also the keeper of the Akashic record in the Egyptian sense, which was not a mystical library in some etheric dimension. It was the principle that what is observed is preserved, that the act of accurate witnessing creates a permanent record not because something writes it down somewhere, but because what has been truly seen cannot be unseen. The observation itself is the inscription. The clear seeing is the record. This is not a metaphor. It is a description of what happens in human memory and human identity when something is finally, honestly, completely observed. It becomes part of the permanent structure of who you are, not as a wound, not as a trauma, but as a known thing, a measured thing. Something that has passed through the hall of two truths and been found to weigh exactly what it weighs. That precision, that refusal to round the weight up or down, that insistence on recording what is actually there rather than what would be more comfortable to record, is the Thoth function at its most demanding. And it is the function this transmission is asking you to activate. Now watch what happens when you bring that into contact with quantum mechanics, because this is where the ancient principle and the modern science arrive at the same place from completely different directions. And the convergence is not metaphorical, it is structural. If this kind of precise, unsparing seeing is something you want to keep returning to, subscribe to this channel and like this video so more people find their way to this kind of work. In quantum mechanics, the measurement problem is one of the foundational, unsolved puzzles in physics. Here is what it describes. A quantum system, a particle, an electron, a photon, exists in a state of superposition before it is measured. It does not have a single definite location, a single definite spin, a single definite state. It exists as a probability distribution across multiple possible states simultaneously. The mathematics of quantum mechanics, specifically the wave function, describes this probability distribution with extraordinary precision. What the mathematics cannot do is tell you which specific outcome you will observe until you observe it. The act of measurement, the act of observation, collapses the wave function. The superposition of possibilities becomes a single actuality, and the specific actuality that emerges is not determined before the observation. The observation is what makes it specific. This is not a philosophical interpretation of quantum mechanics. This is what the mathematics describes and what experiments have confirmed repeatedly since the early 20th century. The double-slit experiment, which has been called the central mystery of quantum mechanics by Richard Feynman, demonstrates this directly. When particles are sent through two slits without being observed, they produce an interference pattern on the screen behind, which is the signature of a wave moving through both slits simultaneously. When a detector is placed at the slits to observe which slit each particle passes through, the interference pattern disappears. The particles behave like particles, not like waves. The observation changes what is observed. Not because the detector physically disturbs the particle in some crude mechanical way, because the act of measurement, of gaining information about which path the particle took, is what collapses the superposition into a single definite state. Now, here is the layer underneath that, the one that almost no one in the spiritual community stops to examine carefully, because examining it carefully requires something uncomfortable. The observer effect in quantum mechanics is real. The measurement problem is real. Observation does collapse wave functions. These are facts, not interpretations. But the way this gets used in popular spiritual content is almost always a misapplication. The quantum observer is not a conscious human being choosing the reality through positive attention. The quantum observer is any physical system that interacts with and gains information about another quantum system. A photon detector is an observer in this sense. A molecule of air that bounces off an electron is an observer in this sense. Consciousness is not required for wave function collapse in the standard formulations of quantum mechanics. And the question of whether it's required is one of the genuinely open debates in the foundations of physics, not a settled fact that confirms what people want it to confirm. I am telling you this not to take something away from you. I am telling you this because the actual truth here is more interesting and more powerful than the simplified version, and you deserve the actual truth. Because here is what is genuinely, demonstrably, measurably true about human observation and human attention. And this is where the Thoth principle becomes something you can actually use. Your attention is not passive. It never was. The neuroscience of attention, particularly the work done in the last 3 decades on what is called predictive processing, reveals something that should stop you in your tracks. Your brain is not a camera. It does not passively record what is in front of it and present you with an accurate image of reality. Your brain is a prediction engine. It is constantly generating models of what it expects to perceive based on prior experience, and it is constantly comparing incoming sensory data against those models. What you consciously experience as perception is largely the model, not the raw data. The raw sensory data is used primarily to update the model when there is a significant mismatch between prediction and input. What this means in practice is that you are largely seeing what you have already decided to see, not maliciously, not through weakness. As a feature of how biological intelligence processes an overwhelming amount of sensory information efficiently. Your brain filters, predicts, and constructs, and the filters it uses are built from the patterns of your past attention. What you have repeatedly attended to becomes the lens through which you see everything. This is where the Thoth function becomes urgent, because if your perception is largely a prediction, then what you are refusing to observe, what you are consistently looking away from, is actively shaping the prediction model that generates your experienced reality. The things you avoid looking at do not disappear from your reality. They go underground. They become the architecture of the model that filters everything else. They run your perception from below the level of awareness. And the moment you observe them directly, the moment you bring the Thoth function to bear on them with precision and without flinching, the model has to update. The prediction has to revise. What felt fixed, what felt like just the way things are, reveals itself as a construction. a construction that was only stable because you kept looking away from it. That is the quantum mechanics of human observation applied accurately. Not the simplified version where you think positive thoughts and the universe rearranges itself. The precise version where you stop avoiding direct observation of the patterns running your reality, and in the act of seeing them clearly, you change the filter through which your reality is constructed. This is what Thoth was measuring. This is what the scribe was recording. The distance between what you are experiencing and what is actually there. And the technology for closing that distance is the same in the ancient system and in the modern science. Precise, unflinching observation. There is something specific about the predictive processing model that most people who encounter it in popular science writing never quite get to, and it is the part that changes everything about how you understand the relationship between your history and your present experience. The neuroscientist Carl Friston, who formalized the predictive processing framework in its current mathematical form, describes the brain as a system that is perpetually trying to minimize what he calls prediction error, the difference between what the model expected and what the senses actually delivered. And the brain has two strategies for minimizing that error. The first is to update the model to match reality. The second is to act on the world in ways that make reality match the model. Read that again. The second strategy is to act on the world in ways that make reality match the model. This means that a significant portion of your behavior, the choices you make, the relationships you enter, the situations you create or avoid, is not driven by what you consciously want. It is driven by the brain's need to confirm its existing predictions, to make the world match what it already expects. And the predictions that are most powerfully driving this confirmation behavior are the ones built around what you have repeatedly avoided observing. Because those avoided observations have never been updated by reality. They sit in the model as fixed, unexamined expectations. And the brain will move heaven and earth, will steer you towards certain people, away from certain opportunities, into certain patterns of behavior again and again, to keep those unexamined predictions from being disconfirmed. This is not a metaphor for karma. This is a description of a specific computational process in the human brain. And it is the precise mechanism by which what you refuse to observe ends up running your life. Not through mystical consequence, through the ordinary, relentless operation of a prediction engine that is trying to confirm what it already believes. The Thoth function is the mechanism for interrupting that loop, not by forcing new beliefs, by bringing the unexamined prediction into direct observation. Because a prediction that is being directly observed is no longer running invisibly, it is on the scales. It is being weighed against the feather of what is actually there. And the moment it is weighed accurately, the moment the actual weight of it is known rather than assumed, the model has to update. Not because you willed it to, because that is what prediction engines do when they receive accurate information they have been missing. Let me show you something. Watch this carefully. There was a man named Elias who was known in his village as a keeper of texts, not a writer, a keeper. He copied the words of others with extraordinary precision, letter by letter, mark by mark, and he was celebrated for this accuracy. People brought him their most important documents to be copied, their contracts, their histories, their letters to the dead. And Elias copied them with a fidelity that others could not match. But Elias had never written a word of his own. He told himself this was humility. He told himself that the words of others were more important than anything he might generate. He told himself that his role was preservation, not creation. And in the village, people agreed with him. Because his copies were genuinely beautiful, and because no one wanted to disturb a man who was so clearly at peace with his purpose. But there was a room in Elias's house that he never entered. A small room at the back with a door that had been closed so long the hinges had begun to rust. And in that room, on a table, were sheets of papyrus that Elias had prepared years ago, blank, waiting. One morning, a traveler came to the village. Not a scholar, not a merchant, a woman named Nadia, who had the particular quality of asking the questions that no one else thought to ask. She stayed in the village for 3 days, and on the second day she met Elias. She watched him work for a long time without speaking. Then she said simply, "What are you afraid to write?" Elias told her he was not afraid of anything. He was at peace with his role. He was a keeper, not a creator. He said this with complete calm, the way a person speaks a truth they have repeated so many times it has worn smooth. Nadia looked at him for a moment. Then she said, "I believe you believe that, but I notice that you have not looked toward the back of the house once since I arrived, and I have been watching your eyes." Elias did not respond, but something shifted in him. Not a dramatic shift, a small one. The kind that happens when someone names the thing you have been not looking at with enough precision that you cannot quite not see it anymore. That night, Elias opened the door to the back room. He did not write anything. He simply stood in the doorway and looked at the blank papyrus on the table. He looked at it for a long time, and what he noticed standing there was not inspiration. What he noticed was the specific quality of the avoidance he had been living inside. He could feel its shape, its weight, the particular way it had organized his entire identity around copying rather than creating, so that he would never have to look at the blank page and discover what he was afraid was there. Which was not that he had nothing to say. He had known for years that he had things to say. What he was afraid of was something more precise. That if he wrote his own words and they were not as important as the words he had been copying, the entire structure of his identity would collapse. If the keeper turned out to be an ordinary person with ordinary thoughts, what was left? He stood in that doorway for a long time, and here is what happened, not what you might expect. He did not suddenly feel liberated. He did not feel a surge of creative power. What he felt was something quieter and more permanent. He felt the specific weight of the avoidance lift. Not because the fear was gone, because he had looked at it directly, and in looking at it directly, he could see exactly what it was. It was not a truth about his limits. It was a prediction, a model his mind had built to protect him from a specific kind of disappointment. And now that he could see the model, he was no longer inside it looking out. He was outside it looking at it. And something that you are outside of cannot run you the same way something you are inside of can. He picked up a reed. He looked at the blank papyrus, and he wrote one sentence. Not a beautiful sentence, not a sentence that would be remembered, just a sentence that was his. And in writing it, he did not become a great writer. He became someone who had stopped letting a closed door organize his entire life. Now look closer at what actually happened in Elias in that moment. Because the transformation was not the writing of the sentence. The writing of the sentence was the evidence of the transformation. The transformation happened in the doorway, before the reed touched the papyrus. It happened in the moment when Elias stopped using his energy to maintain the not seeing and redirected that energy toward direct observation. The avoidance had required continuous maintenance. Every day, the prediction engine in Elias had been steering him away from the back room, away from any thought that might lead toward the blank papyrus, away from any conversation that might bring him close to the question of what he himself had to say. That steering required energy, constant, invisible, exhausting energy, the kind of energy expenditure you do not notice until it stops. And when Elias stood in the doorway and looked, that maintenance stopped. The energy that had been sustaining the not seeing became available. And what he did with it was write one sentence, one ordinary sentence, which was, in the economy of his particular life, an extraordinary act. The room at the back of the house is not a metaphor for creativity. It is a map of a specific function of human consciousness. Every one of us has something we have organized our identity around not looking at, a closed door that we have incorporated into the architecture of who we are so thoroughly that we have forgotten it is a door at all. We have made it a wall. We have decorated the wall. We have told ourselves and others a story about why the wall is there and why it is appropriate, and why it is in fact a form of wisdom to have built it. And the Thoth function, the observer function, the quantum measurement function, whatever language you want to use, is the act of walking up to the wall and recognizing it as a door, not forcing it open, not demolishing it, seeing it clearly. Because the moment you see it clearly, you are no longer inside the story that made it a wall. And being outside the story is the only position from which anything actually changes. If there was a moment in the story of Elias where something in you recognized the door you have been calling a wall, share it in the comments, not the comfortable version. The specific one. What is the thing your attention keeps sliding away from, and what have you been telling yourself about why it is a wall? Now I want to give you something specific to do with this, not a vague instruction to be more mindful, a precise observation practice that targets the exact mechanism we have been discussing. Pause here. This is not a thought exercise, this is an observation. Find something to rest your gaze on, not your phone screen, something in the physical space around you, a surface, an object, a patch of light on the floor. Let your eyes settle on it without trying to analyze it. Just look at it. Now, while your eyes are resting on that external point, I want you to turn your attention inward, not away from the object, alongside it. And I want you to notice what is happening in your mind right now, not the content of your thoughts, the activity of thinking itself. Notice that thoughts are arising. Notice that they are moving. Notice that some of them are pulling at your attention, trying to get you to follow them somewhere. Now notice this. Who is noticing the thoughts? There is a part of you that is watching the thoughts arise and move. That part is not the thoughts. It is not the feeling that came up when you read the title of this transmission. It is not the story you have been telling about yourself, about your life, about what you need or fear or want. It is the one who is watching all of that. It is the Thoth function, the measurer, the scribe who records what is. Stay with that for a moment, not the content of what is being observed, the quality of the one who is observing. Notice that this observer does not have an agenda. It is not trying to fix anything. It is not trying to make the thoughts stop or make the feelings different or make the situation resolve. It is simply watching. with a quality of attention that is, if you look at it carefully, completely undisturbed by what it is watching. That undisturbed quality is not indifference. It is not detachment in the sense of not caring. It is something more precise. It is the stability of a position that is not inside the thing being observed. And from that position, something becomes possible that is not possible from any other position. You can see the construction, you can see the model, you can see the prediction that your mind has been running, not as a truth about reality, but as a pattern, a specific, observable, changeable pattern. This is the frequency that the title is pointing at, not a cosmic transmission from an ancient deity, something more immediate and more powerful than that. The frequency of the observer who is not swept up in what is being observed, the frequency of clear seeing. And it is called Thoth's frequency, not because Thoth is sending it from somewhere else, but because Thoth is the name the ancient Egyptians gave to this function of consciousness. The function that measures, records, and sees clearly. The function that has always been present in you, available to you, waiting for you to stop running from it into the comfort of your predictions. Because here's the thing about predictions. They feel like reality. They feel like facts. The story you have been telling about why you are stuck, about what is impossible for you, about who you are and what you deserve and what the world is like, that story does not feel like a prediction. It feels like an observation. It feels like you are simply reporting what is there. But you are not reporting what is there. You are reporting what your model says should be there. And the model was built from the patterns of your past attention. The things you looked at repeatedly, the things you avoided looking at, the interpretations you accepted without examining, the meanings you assigned to experiences before you had enough information to assign them accurately. The Thoth function is the capacity to look at the model itself, to step outside the prediction and see it as a prediction. And this is where the neuroscience and the ancient principle and the quantum mechanics all converge on the same practical instruction. The most powerful thing you can do is observe what you have been refusing to observe. Not because observation magically rearranges external circumstances, but because what you observe directly you are no longer inside of, and what you are no longer inside of cannot run you the same way. Let me be precise about what this looks like in practice, because the abstract version of this principle is everywhere, and it is not enough. There is a specific pattern that most people who engage with content about frequency, vibration, and consciousness are running, and they are running it invisibly because it feels like spiritual progress. The pattern is this: they are using the language and the concepts of observation, of consciousness, of quantum reality as a more sophisticated version of the same avoidance they were running before they found this material. They were avoiding looking at their financial situation by telling themselves it would change when they shifted their mindset. They were avoiding looking at a relationship dynamic by telling themselves their partner would shift when they raised their vibration. They were avoiding looking at a pattern of self-sabotage by reframing it as a frequency mismatch. They were avoiding the specific, uncomfortable, concrete thing that needed to be seen directly by wrapping it in language that sounds like seeing but functions as not seeing. This is not a criticism, it is an observation, and it is the most important observation in this entire transmission, so I want you to sit with it rather than rush past it. The question is not whether you are using spiritual language. The question is whether the spiritual language is helping you see more clearly or helping you look away more comfortably. And the answer to that question is not found in the language itself. It is found in whether the specific thing you have been avoiding is becoming more visible or less visible as a result of the framework you are using. If your practice of frequency work, of manifestation, of quantum consciousness is making the specific uncomfortable truth more visible and more workable, it is functioning as the Thoth's principle. If it is making the specific uncomfortable truth easier to not look at by giving you a more elevated sounding reason not to look at it, it has become the closed door painted over with sacred geometry. And only you can tell the difference, not by thinking about it, by watching what happens in your body when you bring your attention to the specific thing, the specific financial reality, the specific relationship pattern, the specific behavior you keep promising yourself you will address. Watch what happens. Notice whether your attention slides away. Notice whether you feel a pull toward the more comfortable abstraction. Notice whether you find yourself thinking about frequency and vibration and quantum fields in a way that somehow never quite arrives at the specific thing. That sliding, that pull, that never quite arriving, that is the closed door. That is the thing Nadia noticed in Elias before Elias could see it himself. The eyes that move toward everything except the one thing. And the Thoth function activated is the capacity to notice the sliding, to watch the avoidance without being inside it, to see the pattern of not seeing. Because the moment you can see the pattern of not seeing, you are already outside it, already observing it, already in the position from which something actually changes. There is a practice that some people find useful here, and I want to offer it precisely. When you catch your attention sliding, when you notice the pull toward the more comfortable abstraction, pause and name the thing you were just moving away from. Not in a journal, not in a meditation session, right there, in the moment of the sliding. Say it to yourself with the specificity of a scribe. This is what I was just about to not look at. Name it as precisely as you can, and then look at it for 10 seconds before you do anything else. This is not a cure, it is a calibration. It is the Thoth function applied in real time to the real mechanism of avoidance. And done consistently, it changes the prediction model from the inside. Now let us go deeper into the quantum mechanics of this, because there is a layer here that most people have not examined, and it changes everything about how you understand the relationship between attention and reality. The Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, which is the most widely taught formulation, describes wave function collapse as occurring at the moment of measurement. But there is another formulation developed by Hugh Everett in 1957 called the many worlds interpretation, which describes something different. In Everett's formulation, the wave function never collapses. Every possible outcome of every quantum measurement actually occurs in branching parallel configurations of reality. What we experience as the collapse of a wave function into a single outcome is, in this interpretation, the branching of the universe into all possible outcomes, with our consciousness following one branch. I'm not telling you this because many worlds is definitively correct. It is not definitively correct. It is one of several competing interpretations of quantum mechanics that are all mathematically consistent with the same experimental results. The interpretation question is genuinely unsettled in physics. I am telling you this because the many worlds formulation points at something about attention that is precise and useful regardless of which interpretation is correct. If every possible configuration of your reality exists as a superposition of possibilities, then the question of which configuration you experience is, in some meaningful sense, a question about which configuration you are observing, not in the mystical sense of thinking positive thoughts and attracting a particular outcome. In the more precise sense of which patterns you are attending to, which signals you are measuring, which aspects of your situation you are allowing to become definite through your sustained attention. What you repeatedly observe becomes the stable structure of your experienced reality, not because the other possibilities disappear, but because your attention is the instrument through which possibilities become actualities in your experience. And the attention that is running in the background below awareness, the attention that is organized by your model, by your predictions, by your avoidance patterns, is the attention that is doing most of the measuring, most of the collapsing, most of the determining of which configuration of possibility you actually live in. The Thoth function the observer activated is the capacity to bring that background attention into the foreground, to see what you have been unconsciously measuring and ask whether it is what you actually want to be measuring, to look at the instrument of your attention itself and calibrate it consciously, rather than letting it run on the predictions of the past. There is a third interpretation of quantum mechanics that is less often discussed in popular contexts, but is worth naming here because it makes the most explicit contact with the question of the observer. It is called the relational interpretation, developed by the physicist Carlo Rovelli. In Rovelli's formulation, the properties of a quantum system do not exist absolutely. They exist only relative to other systems that interact with them. There is no observer-independent reality at the quantum level. Reality in this formulation is the network of interactions, the relationships between systems, the measurements that each system performs on every other system it interacts with. What this means is that the observer is not incidental to quantum reality. The observer is constitutive of it, not because consciousness creates reality in some vague mystical sense, because at the fundamental level of physics, what a thing is, what properties it has, what state it is always a statement about its relationship to something that has interacted with it. There is no view from nowhere. There is no property that exists independently of being measured by something. This is not an invitation to solipsism. The relational interpretation does not say that you can think any reality you want into existence. It says something more precise and more demanding, that the reality you inhabit is constituted by the quality and direction of your interactions with it, by what you measure, by what you allow to become definite through your attention, by what you refuse to interact with and therefore keep in superposition, unresolved, running as background noise in the model that generates your experience. The Thoth function is the conscious calibration of those interactions, the deliberate choice to measure what you have been leaving unmeasured, to make definite what you have been keeping vague, to bring the specific thing into the clarity of direct observation so that it can be what it actually is rather than what the unexamined model says it should be. This is not easy. It requires something that is genuinely uncomfortable. It requires being willing to see that the reality you have been experiencing is not simply what is there. It is partly a function of where you have been looking. And looking at that, really looking at it, means taking a kind of responsibility for your experience that is more demanding than either fatalistic resignation or magical thinking. It means sitting with the specific, concrete recognition that the patterns running your reality are patterns you have been sustaining through the quality and direction of your attention, and that you have the capacity to change them, not by forcing a different outcome, but by seeing the pattern clearly enough that it can no longer operate invisibly. That is the activation, not a cosmic event, a cognitive one. The activation of the function that has always been available to you, that was named Thoth by the ancient Egyptians because they understood it was the most important function a conscious mind could perform. The function of clear seeing, of measuring what is actually there, of standing at the threshold between the known and the unknown without flinching from what you find. Let me give you a second practice. This one goes deeper. I want you to think of one specific thing in your life right now that you have been meaning to look at clearly but have not. Not a vague sense of dissatisfaction. A specific thing. A specific relationship, a specific financial pattern, a specific behavior, a specific belief about yourself that you suspect is not accurate but have been sustaining anyway. If several things come to mind, choose the one that your attention most wants to slide away from, the one that generates the most subtle internal resistance when you try to hold it in focus. Got it? Good. Now I want you to observe it, not think about it, not analyze it, not plan what you're going to do about it. Observe it the way Thoth observed the heart on the scales. With complete accuracy and without agenda, look at what is actually there, not the story about why it is there, not the justification for why it has been there, not the plan for how it will eventually not be there. What is actually there right now in this moment? Notice what happens in your body as you do this. Notice whether there is tension or resistance or a pull to look away. Do not follow the pull. Do not fight it either. Simply observe it. The resistance is part of what is there. Observe the resistance too. Now look at the specific thing again, and this time ask yourself, what would I have to see about myself if I looked at this completely clearly? Not what would I have to do, what would I have to see? That question is the precise location of the closed door. Because the thing you would have to see, the thing that your avoidance has been protecting you from seeing, is almost never as catastrophic as the avoidance implies. It is almost always something simpler and more workable than the elaborate structure of not seeing that has been built around it. A fear that is specific enough to be addressed. A pattern that is clear enough to be changed. A truth about yourself that is honest enough to be the foundation of something real. The avoidance is always larger than what it is protecting. The closed door is always heavier than what is behind it. This is not a comfort. It is a fact about the mechanics of avoidance. The energy required to sustain not seeing is always greater than the energy required to see. Which means the moment you look, you do not just gain information, you recover the energy that was being used to keep the door closed. That recovered energy is what people who have done this kind of work describe as a sudden sense of spaciousness, of possibility, of things that felt immovable beginning to shift. Not because the external circumstances changed immediately, because the internal resource that was being consumed by sustained avoidance became available for something else. If you have done that second practice just now and something specific became visible, something you have been circling without landing on, write it in the comments below. One sentence, the thing you just saw, not what you plan to do about it, what you actually saw. The Thoth function practiced in public is still the Thoth function, and naming it precisely here where others are doing the same work is itself an act of measurement. Now I want to bring this back to the signal that found you, because that is where we started. and it is where we need to return. Something brought you here, and I said at the beginning that the reaction you had when you saw the title was a map. Let me tell you what territory it maps. The idea of being chosen, of receiving a signal, of being selected by something cosmic and ancient is one of the most powerful ideas in human consciousness because it points at something real, something that is genuinely there. But like most powerful ideas, it can be used in two completely opposite ways. It can be used as the Thoth function, as a way of seeing something about yourself more clearly. Or it can be used as the closed door, as a way of feeling special without having to look at the specific thing that needs to be seen. The version that is used as a closed door sounds like this. I have been chosen to receive this frequency. I am aligned with this ancient wisdom. I am part of something larger than ordinary people. And the receiving of this specialness is itself the transformation. I do not need to look at the specific thing. The frequency will take care of it. The version that functions as the Thoth principle sounds like this. Something in me recognized this signal. Something in me was already oriented toward this kind of seeing. And that recognition is not an arrival, it is a beginning. It is the moment I turn and walk toward the closed door instead of away from it. It is the moment I pick up the reed and write the first sentence that is actually mine. Both versions feel like spiritual progress. One of them is. One of them is more sophisticated avoidance, and only you can tell the difference. Not by thinking about which one sounds more elevated, by watching what your attention does when you try to bring it to the specific thing. If the signal you received today sends you toward clearer observation of the specific thing, it is functioning as Thoth. If it sends you toward a feeling of specialness that makes the specific thing feel less urgent, it is functioning as the closed door. The signal is the same. The direction you take it is the variable. And the direction you take it is determined by whether you are willing to do what the Thoth function actually requires, which is to measure what is actually there, including the things you have been hoping the frequency would take care of, without you having to look at them directly. Here's something I want to say with precision, because it matters. The ancient Egyptians were not naive about consciousness. The system they built, the cosmological framework that Thoth inhabits, was not a system of wishful thinking or magical intervention. It was a system of precise measurement. The Hall of Two Truths, where the heart is weighed against the feather of Ma'at, is not a scene of divine mercy or divine wrath. It is a scene of absolute accuracy. The heart is weighed not against a standard of goodness or virtue in the moralistic sense. It is weighed against truth itself, against what is actually there, against the reality of what you have observed and what you have refused to observe, against the quality of your seeing. The feather of Ma'at is not light because truth is easy. It is light because truth, when you are not carrying the weight of sustained avoidance, is actually lighter than the stories you build to avoid it. The heart that is heavier than the feather is the heart that has been carrying the weight of what it refused to see. The heart that is equal to the feather is the heart that has been willing to look. This is not a description of an afterlife judgment. It is a description of what happens in consciousness when you stop carrying the weight of sustained avoidance. The heart gets lighter, not because the difficult things become easier, because the energy of not seeing them is no longer required. And look at the specific figure in the Hall of Two Truths who is doing the weighing. It is not Ra, the solar principle. It is not Osiris, the principle of regeneration and judgment. It is Thoth. the measurer, the one with no stake in the outcome, the one whose function is not to hope the heart is light or fear that it is heavy, but to read the scales with complete accuracy and record what is actually there. Thoth does not intervene in the weighing. Thoth does not adjust the scales. Thoth stands at the threshold as the principle of accurate observation and records the truth of what is found. This is the model for the observer function at its most complete. Not the observer who wants a particular outcome, not the observer who is afraid of what will be found. The observer who simply measures what is there and records it accurately, who brings to the most intimate and consequential act of seeing the same quality of attention that a physicist brings to an experiment. Not hoping, not fearing, measuring. And here is why this matters for you, specifically right now. The things you have been avoiding looking at in your own life, the closed doors, the patterns you have been sustaining through the energy of not seeing, they have not been avoided because you are weak or unconscious or spiritually undeveloped. They have been avoided because the observer you have been bringing to them has had a stake in the outcome, has been afraid of what would be found, has been hoping that looking would reveal something manageable rather than something that requires real change. The Thoth function does not require you to not be afraid. It requires you to observe the fear as precisely as you observe the thing you are afraid of, to weigh the fear against the feather too, to see it clearly enough that you can tell the difference between the fear and the truth, because they are not the same thing. The fear is a prediction. The truth is what is actually there. And the Thoth function is the capacity to stand at the scales and tell the difference. And this is where the quantum mechanics and the ancient principle and the neuroscience all arrive at the same practical instruction from three completely different directions. The weight you are carrying is not the weight of your circumstances. It is the weight of the attention you are using to sustain the not seeing of your circumstances. And the moment you redirect that attention toward direct observation, the weight shifts. Not because the circumstances immediately change, because you are no longer spending the energy of your attention on maintaining a specific blindness. Let me take you into the third and deepest layer of this, because there is something underneath everything we have discussed that needs to be named precisely. We have talked about the Thoth function as the observer. We have talked about what happens when you observe the specific thing you have been avoiding. We have talked about the quantum mechanics of measurement and the neuroscience of predictive processing and the ancient Egyptian principle of weighing the heart against the feather of truth. And all of that is real and useful and worth sitting with. But there is a question underneath all of it that is more fundamental than any of those frameworks. And it is the question that the Thoth function, fully activated, eventually turns toward. Not toward the specific thing you have been avoiding, toward the observer itself. Who is the one who is watching? This is not a trick question. It is not a philosophical puzzle designed to make you feel confused. It is the most direct question you can ask, and the answer, when you look at it carefully, is the most surprising thing in this entire transmission. When you watch your thoughts, you are not the thoughts. When you watch your feelings, you are not the feelings. When you watch your patterns, your predictions, your models, your avoidance strategies, you are not any of those things. You are the one who is watching them. And that one, the watcher, has a quality that none of the things being watched have. It does not change based on what it is observing. It does not become the fear when it watches fear. It does not become the pattern when it watches the pattern. It remains the observer. stable, present, undisturbed by the content of what it witnesses. In the Hermetic tradition, which is the tradition most directly associated with Thoth in the Western lineage, this principle is stated as the Kybalions' law of mentalism. The all is mind, the universe is mental. Which sounds mystical until you look at it through the lens of what we have been discussing. What it is pointing at is this: the fundamental nature of what you are is not the content of your experience. It is the awareness in which experience arises. The mind that observes, not the thoughts that are observed. The consciousness that watches, not the patterns that are watched. And here is why this matters practically, not philosophically. If you identify with the thoughts, the feelings, the patterns, the predictions, then observing them feels threatening, because if the pattern is you, then seeing the pattern clearly means seeing something wrong with you. And the mind will do almost anything to avoid seeing something wrong with itself, including building elaborate structures of not seeing, including finding sophisticated spiritual frameworks that feel like observation but function as avoidance. But if you identify with the observer, with the awareness that watches the pattern without being the pattern, then observing the pattern is not threatening, it is simply what you do. You watch. The pattern arises, you see it clearly. And in seeing it clearly, you are already not inside it, already in the position from which it can change. This is the shift that the Thoth function, fully activated, produces. Not a shift in your circumstances, a shift in what you take yourself to be. From the content of consciousness to the consciousness that contains the content. From the thought to the thinker. From the pattern to the one who watches the pattern with the same equanimity with which Thoth watched the heart on the scales, not hoping for a particular outcome. Not afraid of what will be found, simply measuring what is actually there, and from that position, from the position of the observer who is not inside what is being observed, something becomes possible that is not possible from any other position. You can see the construction of your reality clearly enough to participate in its reconstruction, not through force, not through magical thinking. Through the simple, radical, continuously available act of clear seeing. There is a third character I want to introduce because the parable of Elias showed you the closed door, and I want to show you something different. I want to show you what happens when the observer function is turned not toward what you have been avoiding, but toward the observer itself. There was a woman named Mira who had spent years studying the nature of consciousness, not in an academic setting, in the direct first-person way. She had sat in silence for thousands of hours. She had watched her thoughts arise and dissolve. She had observed her emotions with the precision of a scientist. She had become genuinely skilled at the observer function. People came to her with their questions, and she could point at the thing they were avoiding with a clarity that was sometimes startling. But Mira had a problem she could not quite name. She was skilled at observation, but she was not free. There was something in her that remained tense, even in the middle of her most precise observation. A subtle holding, a quality of watching that was almost imperceptible, but was not quite the absolute stillness she had read about and glimpsed occasionally in her deepest practice. One day, an old teacher she had not seen in years came to visit. He sat with her for a long time without speaking. Then he asked her, "When you observe your thoughts, who are you protecting?" Mira did not understand the question. She said she was not protecting anyone, she was simply observing. The teacher nodded. And then he said, Watch what happens in you when I tell you that you are not the observer. You are the observed. Mira felt something shift in her, a small but significant disturbance, and because she was skilled at observation, she watched the disturbance rather than reacting to it. She watched it carefully, and what she found was surprising. Underneath her skill as an observer, underneath the precision and the clarity she had cultivated, there was a subtle identification with the observer identity itself. She had moved from identifying with her thoughts and feelings to identifying with the one who watches thoughts and feelings. And that identification, that subtle holding of the observer position as who she was itself a construction, a more refined construction than the one she had started with, but a construction nonetheless. Because the awareness that watches the observer is not the observer, the consciousness that contains the watching is not itself the watcher. The ground in which all of it arises, the thoughts, the feelings, the patterns, the observer, the watching itself, that ground has no position. It is not inside or outside, it is not watching or being watched. It simply is. And it is the one thing that cannot be made into an object of observation, because it is the subject that makes all observation possible. The teacher said, Thoth was not the scribe. Thoth was the awareness in which the scribing happened. The measurement was not Thoth. Thoth was what made measurement possible. Mira sat with this for a long time, and what she found, when she stopped holding the observer position as an identity and simply rested in the awareness that made observation possible, was the absolute stillness she had been looking for. Not through more skillful observation, through the recognition that she was not the observer. She was the awareness in which the observer arose. And the tension that had been present, even in her most precise observation, dissolved. Not because she stopped observing, because she stopped holding the observer as a fixed position that needed to be maintained. The observation continued, but it arose from something that was not holding itself together, something that did not need to protect itself. Something that was already, always, undisturbed. This is the deepest layer of the Thoth principle. The scribe who records what is not himself the recording. The measurer who weighs the heart is not himself the weighing. The observer who watches reality collapse from superposition into actuality is not himself a fixed position in that reality. The observer is an expression of something more fundamental, an awareness that is not itself observable, a consciousness that is not itself a content of consciousness. And you are that, not the thoughts, not the feelings, not the patterns, not even the observer, the awareness in which all of it arises, the ground that makes all of it possible, the one thing that has never actually been disturbed by anything you have experienced because it is not inside the experience. It is what experience happens in. This is not a belief. You cannot believe your way to this recognition. You can only see it. And the seeing of it is the most radical act of observation possible because it is the observer turning toward itself and finding, instead of a fixed thing, an open space. A ground that has no edges, a consciousness that is not a position but a presence. And from that presence, the specific thing you have been avoiding looks different. Not smaller, not less real, but workable. Observable, something that can be seen clearly without the observer being threatened by it. Because the observer is not a position that can be threatened, it is the ground in which all positions arise and dissolve. Now, Here's where I want to bring this all the way back to the beginning. Because we started with a signal that found you, and I want to tell you precisely what that signal is. The signal is not from Thoth. The signal is Thoth, the function itself. The capacity for clear seeing that is present in you right now, that has always been present in you. That was present in you before you found this transmission and will be present in you after it ends. The signal that found you is the recognition of that capacity. The moment when something in you oriented toward the possibility of seeing more clearly, of looking at the specific thing, of standing at the threshold of the closed door and recognizing it as a door. That moment of recognition is the activation. Not something that was done to you from outside, something that arose in you from the ground of your own awareness. The frequency that the title points at is not a transmission from an ancient figure in some cosmic realm. It is the frequency of your own consciousness when it is operating as the Thoth function. When it is measuring what is actually there, when it is weighing the heart against the feather of truth without flinching from what it finds. You were chosen not by a deity, but by your own readiness. Something in you was ready to look, and that readiness, that orientation toward clear seeing, is what brought you here, is what kept you here through the uncomfortable parts, is what allowed you to sit with the question of who is watching without immediately resolving it into a comfortable answer. That readiness is the signal. And the signal is already active. It has been active since the moment you recognized it. The question now is what you do with the activation. And I want to be precise about this because the answer is not what most people expect. The activation of the Thoth function does not mean you now have access to cosmic wisdom that others lack. It does not mean you have been elevated above the ordinary requirements of clear seeing. It does not mean the specific thing you have been avoiding will now be handled by the frequency on your behalf. It means you have recognized the capacity for clear seeing that is available to you. And the work, the real work, the work that the ancient Egyptians understood and that the quantum physicists are circling and that the neuroscientists are mapping, the work is the continuous, daily specific practice of actually using that capacity, of walking toward the closed door, of looking at the specific thing, of watching the observer watching, of resting in the ground that makes observation possible. Not once, not in a single transformative moment, continuously. As the orientation of your attention, as the quality of your seeing, this is what it means to live as the Thoth function. Not to have received a cosmic transmission that elevated you, to have recognized the capacity for clear seeing and to have chosen continuously to use it, to look where others look away, to measure what is actually there, to weigh the heart against the feather of truth without softening what you find. And here's the promise that this makes, not as a spiritual consolation, but as a description of what actually happens. The reality you experience is a function of the quality of your observation, not in the simplified quantum manifestation sense. In the precise, neuroscientific, phenomenological, measurably demonstrable sense. What you observe clearly, you are no longer inside of. What you are no longer inside of, you can work with. What you can work with, you can change, not through force, through the continuous application of clear seeing to the specific things that have been running your reality from below the level of awareness. The closed doors open. Not because a frequency opens them, because you stop using your energy to keep them closed. And the energy that was sustaining the not seeing becomes available for the actual work of your life, for the sentence that is actually yours, for the relationship that is actually honest, for the financial pattern that is actually addressed, for the behavior that is actually changed, for the version of yourself that is not organized around what you have been refusing to see. Before we close, I want to give you something to take with you. Not a practice this time, a question. The kind of question that Thoth would ask. The kind of question that, if you sit with it long enough and honestly enough, does the work of 1,000 practices. What is the one thing, the most specific thing, that you would have to see about yourself, about your life, about the reality you have been constructing, if you were willing to look completely clearly? Not what you would have to do, what you would have to see. Sit with that, not for a moment, for as long as it takes for the answer to become specific enough that you can no longer look away from it. And when it becomes that specific, when you can feel the weight of it and the pull to look away from it and the shape of the closed door that has been built around it, that is the moment. That is the activation, that is the Thoth function, awake in you, standing at the threshold, reed in hand, ready to measure what is actually there. The comment section below this video is not a place to perform spiritual attainment. It is a place to practice the Thoth function in public. If you are willing, write one sentence, not about what you learned, about what you saw. The specific thing, named as precisely as you can name it, that became visible to you during this transmission. Not the comfortable insight, the one that made you want to look away. Write it, because naming it precisely is itself an act of observation. And every act of observation, no matter how small, is the Thoth function in motion. Is the heart being held up to the feather? Is the wave function collapsing from possibility into actuality through the instrument of your clear seeing? If this transmission reached something in you that you have been waiting to have reached, the most honest thing you can do is share it. Not because the channel needs it, though it does help. Because there is someone in your life who has a closed door they have been calling a wall for a long time, and they are ready to look. They just need someone to name the door, to say, I notice your eyes move away from the back of the house. They need the Nadia function, and you, having received this, can be that for them. When you share this with someone, you are not just passing along a video, you are giving them permission to look. And that permission, offered by someone who has already chosen to see, lands differently than anything they could have found on their own. The seeing becomes shared, the field of observation widens, and what two people are willing to look at together is almost always more than what either could face alone. When the noise of the day has settled, when you find yourself reacting instead of watching, come back to this. Re-watch it from the beginning. Not because you missed something the first time, but because the observer you bring to it will be different. And what a different observer sees in the same material is never quite the same transmission. Stay in the practice. Come back to the observer, not the observer as an identity to hold. The awareness in which observation arises, the ground that is undisturbed by what it witnesses, the consciousness that is not a position but a presence. The signal did not find you so you could feel chosen. It found you so you could start choosing. Choosing to look, choosing to measure, choosing to weigh the heart against the feather of truth and see clearly what is actually there. Thoth did not grant wisdom. Thoth measured what was real, and in the measuring, made it possible for reality to be worked with honestly. That is the frequency. It is yours. It has always been yours. The only question that has ever mattered is whether you're willing to use it. You were never meant to look away. Now you see. And what has been seen cannot be unseen.